If you think the government system works like a Swiss watch, you're technically right. It's just that this watch is, golden, on my wrist, gifted by grateful contractors. But please, don't jump to conclusions. I'm an honest man, like everyone in the government. It just so happens that honesty and bottomless state budgets get along especially well in my case. People usually imagine corruption as something complicated and secret, like we're sitting in basements with treasure maps planning how to rob the state. Well, yeah, sometimes it looks like that too, but most of the time it's much simpler. Everything is done in a cozy, family style. Calm, relaxed, with coffee, cookies, and tender documentation where the fine print exists so that an honest person like me can easily say, "Oh, I just didn't notice it." But we both know I noticed everything perfectly. So, make some tea, grab a cookie, and pull your favorite calculator closer, because today we're talking about the most beautiful, most romantic, most magical machine for turning public money into private assets: government procurement. Welcome to the reality where the word tender sounds like a gift from destiny, and where someone with my sense of humor sees an endless collection of ways to turn boring bureaucracy into a live art form. And now, attention. Today, the deputy will tell you about an unusual fraudulent sphere that he, of course, never participated in, just heard a lot about it. But you understand what I mean. And before we continue, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because the more people see this video, the fewer chances any of my colleagues will realize I know a bit too much. Alright, let's go. You've probably heard the word competition. In a normal world, a competition is when the strongest, smartest, and best compete. In our world, a competition is when people compete at who's better at walking into an office, closing the door, and discussing the matter. And I don't blame anyone. The system is built this way. If you can do it easier, why would you do it more honestly? That's the basic survival logic of any bureaucrat. But let me tell you how it usually works. Let's imagine I'm an honest MP. Just imagine, who knows, maybe I'll pull it off. I have to launch a new tender, say, to build a bridge. A bridge, as you understand, is serious business. Strategic, important. Its length, height, materials, all of that is carefully discussed. Most carefully, of course, we discuss the cost. And cost is a whole separate novel. If the bridge costs 10 billion, it means we can build it for 3. The remaining 7, well, life is complicated and they somehow dissolve among people who skillfully support the infrastructure of their personal ambitions. You'd be surprised, but the statistics confirm. In most countries, cost overruns on major infrastructure projects reach 20% to 45%. And that's just official numbers. In reality, the figure is always a bit higher, or much higher. Personally, I believe that if a bridge didn't double in price along the way, that's almost insulting. It means no one showed any creativity. Now let's imagine a tender for road repairs. That's pure poetry. Oh, roads. That beautiful black, sticky substance that unites people stronger than sports, culture, or even shared hatred of taxes. Because roads are the foundation of the entire tender economy. A pothole appears. It must be fixed. The pothole is fixed. We need to explain why it appeared again. It appears again. We need a new contract. Circular economy. Sustainable. Renewable. Innovation in action. The scheme is simple. A road repair is needed. A tender is announced. 5 companies apply. 4 of them are mine, just with different legal owners on paper. The 5th is honest. We let the honest one feel important, but of course they lose, because my company, Bright Future 17, bids 0.3% cheaper. Mathematically, a victory. Morally, you get it. And then the magic begins. You think a person steals money when it arrives in his account. In reality, you start stealing money the moment you write the technical specification. Real professionals know the theft doesn't begin when you sign. It begins when you formulate. That's where you need creative intelligence. Look, if you write in the spec asphalt thickness not less than 20 centimeters, the contractor has to follow that. If you write not more than, he'll follow that too. But if you write thickness determined by the contractor according to project optimization, that's it. You can consider the optimization process will result in asphalt with a thickness of about 3 of your disappointments. And you know what's funny? Even if the road falls apart in 6 months, the contractor will always be the one blamed. And that's fair, because responsibility is sacred. And me? I was just signing papers. As we like to say, I don't know, I'm not a road engineer. Now let's move on to the most entertaining part, kickbacks. Oh, that's an art. People think a kickback is when someone quietly hands you a suitcase. Well, yeah, sometimes that happens too, but real professionals work elegantly. A kickback can be disguised as a charitable donation to your foundation for supporting deputies' children. A kickback can come as payment for consulting services to your wife, who suddenly became an expert in the road industry. A kickback can look like your nephew getting a deputy director position in a company without working a single day. That's a classic. Hard suitcases are old school. Today we do it stylishly and modern. Cryptocurrencies, offshore accounts, cashback programs. Civilization is moving forward. I recently learned the term institutional corruption. Sounds beautiful. That's when corruption is so systemic that nobody even calls it corruption anymore. It's like plumbing. It exists, it works, nobody complains. But let me share a sneaky secret that very few understand. A tender is not just a way to steal money. It's a way to legalize. The very idea that you're not stealing anything. You see? You publish the tender, run the procedure, choose the winner. And everything looks perfect. Transparent. Honest. Only the transparency is slightly foggy, but people like it. So, the procedure, the tender is announced. The whole country sees I'm such a great guy. 5 companies are competing. Transparent system, cameras, online platform, everything official. But there's a nuance. The winner is known in advance. The rest are extras. Background characters in the grand theater of public procurement. They submit documents, participate, lose. And the winner is the company that paid in advance for consultation on how to prepare the documents. And how does it look on paper? The company offered the most economically advantageous and technically sound proposal. Beautiful, isn't it? Brings tears to your eyes. But let me give you some numbers so you don't think I'm making this up. In many countries, up to 30% of all public contracts have minimal competition, meaning 2 bidders or fewer. And here's the fun part. In 70% of those cases, one company's documents contain a mistake, which makes the victory of the second automatic. And guess who helps both sides prepare their documents? Right. Highly qualified experts I personally recommend. There's also such a thing as a tender tailored to a specific company. That's when the technical spec describes the project so narrowly that only one company in the country can possibly qualify. For example, the contractor must have experience building a bridge 472 meters long, 17 meters high, at an angle of 11.3 degabers, made of granite extracted on the northeast slope of a ravine to which only one company has licensed access. And then people act surprised. Why is there only one bidder? Well, what did you expect? We just want quality. Oh, and I absolutely love supply tenders. So many opportunities there. Take chairs. If you think a chair costs $50, you just don't know that government chairs must be especially comfortable. They cost at least $350, or better, $600, because the ergonomics of the work environment affect officials' productivity. I'll be honest, we don't really believe in productivity, but we strongly believe in chairs. And computers? A computer that costs $800 in a store suddenly becomes a high-performance digital computing unit that costs $2,200. Because in the public sector, everything has to sound solid. But the best of all are services. Because a service is almost always air. And air is very hard to evaluate. So, information support services can cost millions. And nobody will tell you it's wrong. What? Are you against information? The most brilliant scheme is consulting. Consulting is when you pay millions to people who explain to you things you already knew. I recently saw a contract. Development of a strategy to improve municipal management efficiency. Price, $150 million. The document, 36 pages. 18 of them were charts copied from the internet. And you know what's hilarious? It's absolutely legal. Let's get back to the tastiest part, construction tenders. If you think roads are the most profitable, that just means you haven't seen how easily the walls of new social facilities breathe money. Schools, hospitals, sports centers. These are gifts of fate. Because there you can justify absolutely everything. Quality, safety, social importance. Want to double the budget? We must ensure maximum safety. Triple it? New regulations require it. 4 times? The project was revised by experts. Experts, of course, from our own internal family circle. Well, Maybe my nephew had a tough week and needs emotional compensation. Do you know what an expert is? It's a person who, for money, explains why you need to spend even more money. And that is a brilliant profession. Sometimes I think, if I weren't a member of parliament, I'd become an expert in expense justification. You need constant creativity there. Imagine, in a school project, you have to replace regular windows with ultra-high energy efficient ones. Why? Because the climate conditions of the region require it. Which region? This one. Ours. Yes, we must care about the children, and nobody argues. You've probably heard about inflation adjustment. When a project stretches over the years, you can always say, prices have gone up, we are forced to increase the budget. And people accept it. Because inflation is a well-known thing, nobody wants to argue. What they don't know is that inflation can be adjusted based on the data provided by the contractor. And the contractor is always very worried that prices for materials will go up. Even if they don't, even if they actually go down, in his report it will still be plus 20%. Well, he's concerned about the project. The best part is when the budget goes up and the amount of work stays the same. That's like a stress bonus. We call it psychological compensation for the construction industry. Sounds very scientific, doesn't it? But tenders aren't just about money. They're about the social fabric of the state. They're about connections, relationships, mutual obligations between people. You never know when you'll need someone who did a wonderful renovation of your city administration last year. Partnership, is a network of mutual assistance. You help today. They'll help you tomorrow. You don't help? Well, tomorrow someone else wins the contract. The most interesting thing is how public procurement affects a political career. Let me reveal a secret. A successful politician is not the one who cares about people. It's the one who can organize an ecosystem around himself. I call it the ecosystem of financial cohesion. For example, if the contractor does everything well and everyone is satisfied, he gives money to the budget. The budget gives projects. Projects give jobs. Jobs give profit. Profit gives gratitude. And gratitude, well, you know exactly where gratitude leads. But even the best schemes sometimes break down. A journalist appears, a real one, alive, with eyes that read documents too attentively, and they start asking questions. In those moments, I remember my favorite phrase, those who ask too many questions don't live long. Joke. Probably. Journalists are a disaster for tender romanticism. For some reason, they think that if one contractor wins 24 tenders in a row, something must be fishy. People, be logical. Maybe he's just talented. Maybe he has exceptional skills in filling out forms. Maybe he has psychic abilities to guess the correct price on behalf of the government. Why do we have to immediately think of corruption? So they come to me and ask, why do 3 companies, all somehow connected, win tenders in your region? And I'm a simple man. I smile and say, what's wrong with that? Family business. And you know what's surprising? Half of the people take that calmly. The system is so familiar that even citizens sometimes say, well, at least they're doing something. And that's honestly the scariest part. When corruption becomes normal. When people stop being shocked. When the phrase, they stole 100 million, sounds as routine as I bought potatoes. Let's talk about some tender myths. Myth number 1, corruption exists only in poor countries. No, my dear ones. In rich countries it exists too, just at higher price tags. Instead of cash in bags, you get stock options. Instead of gifts, you get paid speeches for $200,000. Instead of nephews and companies, you get research centers named after politicians. The schemes are more elegant, more aesthetic, but the essence is the same. Tenders are a wonderful tool in any economy. Myth number 2, all tenders are rigged. No, some are honest. It's just that those are usually so tiny no one notices them. For example, buying pens for a local library. There, it's all fair. Although, even there you can play with the price if you're creative, but that's beginner level. Myth number 3, public procurement harms the economy. On the contrary, it drives the economy. Money circulates. It leaves the budget, enters the contractor's pocket, then into the deputy's pocket, then offshore, then back into real estate, and real estate generates new tenders. The economy is cyclical. And you know what's funniest? Almost all of these schemes are perfectly legal. That's the real art form. I call it legalized moral flexing. From a legal standpoint, everything is clean. Ethically, well, we don't work in a church, do we? But let's get back to the science. You wanted scientific terms. There's something called information asymmetry. That's when one side knows more than the other. In tenders, the asymmetry is always on our side, because citizens don't read documents. At best, they read headlines, so we can write anything. Use of innovative thermopolymers. Implementation of adaptive optimization technologies. Application of progressive structural systems. Sounds great, right? Nobody knows what it means, but it sounds like we're building the future. Now imagine that a tender is a chess game. You make a move, announce the competition. The contractor moves, submits documents. You respond, request clarifications, amendments, small changes. Contractor adjusts the budget. In the end, checkmate. The contract is signed. Only in this chess game, you play both white and black, and the contractor is just a piece you move around the board. Let me tell you a story, a real one. Well, almost. We had a tender for installing benches. Simple benches, classic wooden ones. Price per bench, $50. But if you apply a bit of imagination, they can become elements of the urban environment made of high-quality materials meeting ergonomic standards. And now it's $400. So we bought these benches. Journalists came and asked, why are they so expensive? And we say, these are innovative benches. They improve social communication in the city. They didn't realize it, but we had just sold them air with a piece of wood. That was one of those days I truly felt my life had meaning. Sometimes I think, what if all tenders suddenly became honest? Just imagine the stress. Everything strictly by the rules. The winner is the one who's actually best. No secret meetings, no informal discussions, no tasty bonuses. Horrifying. People think honesty is easy. It's not. Honesty is hard work. You actually have to do what you promised, and that's dangerous. Let's get a bit philosophical. Why do tenders so easily turn into a comedy? Because the system is created by people, and people are weak. They have desires, ambitions, needs, mortgages, lovers, cars, another car, a second lover. They have motives. And if there are motives, there are loopholes. And if there are loopholes, someone will find them. Tenders are a test of human nature, and many people fail it spectacularly. But here's the most important thing. No corruption exists without demand. People want roads, hospitals, schools. But they want them cheap. They want quality. But they want it fast. They want reports, but don't want to read them. So we end up building not what's truly needed, but what can be convincingly sold on paper. And this brings me to the conclusion, yes, even a deputy can have a conclusion. Rarely, but accurately. The conclusion is simple. Government tenders are a mirror of society. If society has problems, tenders will reflect them. They'll be as full of holes as our roads, as cunning as our officials, as foggy as our explanations. And if one day people genuinely want honesty, it will appear. Because the system always adjusts to demand. Today, the demand is for optimization, efficiency, and flexible budgets. So that's how we live. If tomorrow there is real demand for transparency, we'll have to live differently. Maybe even work. Imagine, actually work. Terrifying thought. But for now, the system works. And it works for those who know how to use its rules. Yes, tenders are the dirty truth about government. But the real truth is that as long as society keeps its eyes closed, nobody in power is going to open theirs. And that's your little bedtime story from your favorite, absolutely honest deputy who, of course, never does any of this. He's just heard rumors. But you know exactly what I mean.